It was at the beginning of December that the great change on the Eastern Front began to manifest itself. In Moscow, as preparations for the decisive German thrust were still progressing, and similarly in Tula, the important munitions town 100 miles south of the Soviet capital, the Russian commanders launched a vigorous counteroffensive, the opening phases of which we'll see later. Inside every city, the call to arms is answered by men and women, young and old alike. Outside every town, citizens of the Soviet Union bend their backs in the digging of anti-tank trenches. When the nation is in peril, the nation responds with a will. Out of the war factories, many of them transported bodily out of the danger zones to places of safety, comes the almost uninterrupted flow of weapons. An armoured train, now completed, is shunted from its foundry to the front line of battle. These mobile fortresses have played a big part in the Russian campaign. From the armament works come tanks to maintain the incredible pressure being exerted against the now retreating Germans. In the field, Soviet soldiers listened to the words of Stalin's speech to the world, in which he said, "The German invaders want a war of annihilation. They'll get it. From now on, the task of all our fighters is to exterminate all invaders who penetrate our country." Caucasian Cossacks are also employed in the defense of Moscow. More, they're engaged in the cutting down of the frozen stragglers, which Adolf Hitler is leading in reverse. Along the whole front, the great Russian counteroffensive, which Stalin personally worked out in every detail, springs to life. Fresh and well-equipped tank divisions are rushed forward to wreak a terrible vengeance on the butchers of Russian families and homes. No mercy was shown. No mercy will be given in return. Back across the land that was pillaged and stolen from them goes an ironclad army of retribution. On every mile of reclaimed land, the Russians are finding grim evidence of ruthlessness and savagery. That is the driving force that urges them onwards to catch the perpetrators and slay them to a man. After many months of defensive fighting, Russia is now sending Hitler's troops reeling back in confusion under smashing blows. Backed up by supplies from reorganized industries and her allies, and cheered by high optimism which is sweeping the country, the great hour of retaliation is at hand. Here are the first pictures of the great winter offensive against Germany. Fierce determination grips every man in the Soviet Air Force. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth is their maxim. Whilst the Luftwaffe struggle with icebound aerodromes, Russian airmen well-versed in Arctic flying conditions seize the opportunity with both hands to harry the German supply columns, now ploughing right about face through the snow. What better pictorial backgrounds could we find than these to illustrate Mr. Eden's words when he said, "We should be making a great mistake if we supposed that what happened in Russia during the last few weeks had been due to chance. Over the roads to Moscow, which Napoleon traveled in retreat, fly Russian aircraft, discharging their bombs on another invading army, following in the footsteps of the defeated conqueror of 1812. History is indeed repeating itself." In the frozen forests, a hurricane of Russian artillery fire is overtaking the Germans everywhere, giving them no time to recover. The fury of Stalin's overpowering offensive never lets up. The war of movement which Hitler loved so much has now swung against him. Tanks were once his joy, now they're his nightmare. It's tanks that are continually outflanking him, tanks that are surrounding his garrisons and annihilating them. With terrifying speed, cavalrymen mounted on their tough, shaggy horses bear down on the demoralized enemy, whose limbs, stiff with cold, fail them. Hand-to-hand fighting was never to the Germans' liking, and under these conditions, the vainglorious German soldiers crumple up. At the point of the bayonet, the ill-clad Nazis are hunted out. Again quoting Mr. Eden, they're not a bit like the soldiers of a victorious army. Suffering bitterly from cold in temperatures that drop to 58 degrees below zero, Hitler's frozen wrecks are rounded up. General Winter takes heavy toll in casualties, striking at his victims with weapons which include frostbite and typhus. Like a township swept by a cyclone, litter of every description marks the site of hurried retreat. Scattered in every direction lie German weapons flung aside in despair or smashed by the remorseless hammer blows of the pursuing Red Armies. Not ready for use. For once a German has told the truth. Commander Hitler has found more than weapons, not ready for use. Hundreds of thousands of his men now have no further use for him, nor he for them. They were made to understand that nothing could be more noble than to die for their Führer. Orders found on German soldiers told them to kill everything Russian coming their way, not to stop killing even when they came before old people, women, and children. These miserable creatures relished the work of mass murder, reveled in the job of total destruction. The sufferings they're going through now deserve no sympathy. They were sent to stamp out life. Now life is stamping out them.